So let's start with how to love God today. Last time we did 7 realities. So Jai Baba, and over to you, Ashokji.
जय बाबा अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय. How to love God? To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. 1. If instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. 2. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. 3. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. 4. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. 5. If we endure a lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. 6. If we understand and feel that our greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. 7. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and to find Himself as our own self. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thank you,
To
Karthik.
love, yeah, to love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Him as our own self. What a beautiful line.
Absolutely. And all the
So,
lines have got a significant meaning.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So the profundity of the messages are something that comes out only when you start reading it over and over again, and especially each time you read it, you get the depth of those statements. So anyway, Jai Baba, thank you for that. So before we continue, so technically we read page plus of Maya 3. But let's start from Maya, the third part, and I think we can finish the third part and the first part today. Let's just quickly see where we are. So we are in part 3, and the sections are the para headings: discerning for falsehood. In falsehood, there is suspicion and fear. Falsehood betrays itself; it gives it up. You know that it is false. Two types of falsehoods exist. Analogy of functional and structural diseases. So the falsehoods, if you remember, we spent quite some time on it. The two falsehoods are functional and structural. Analogically comparable to functional and structural diseases. Then he talks about the importance of purifying intellect, the citadels of Maya, the structures, the solid foundations, the buildings that Maya has built, clarity of perception from inner purity, God as the only truth, God is indivisible, no opinions or ways thinking within soul, soul is infinite thought and intelligence. God is the only reality. Okay, so I think maybe quickly we will read the 2 pages that we already read without maybe if there is a need for any discussion, we can always stop. But then rather than start from a page and a half after we started the other day, which is somewhere here, let's start from the beginning of part 3. We have part 3, and after part 3, we'll take up part 1. Where is it? Yeah, part 3, and then we take up part 1. Yeah, is that fine, Ashok?
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely fine.
Okay, cool. So do you want me to start with reading the first part? I can.
Fine.
Jai Baba. So part three, transcending the falsehoods of Maya. The first part is discerning falsehood. Countless are the falsehoods that a Maya ridden person embraces in the stupor of ignorance. And from the very beginning, falsehoods carry within themselves their own insufficiency and bankruptcy. Sooner or later, they are known to be falsehoods. This brings one to the question, how does one discern the falsehood as falsehood? There is no way out of falsehood except by knowing it as falsehood, but this knowledge of falsehood as falsehood would never come unless it was in some way latent in falsehood itself from the very beginning. In falsehood, there is suspicion and fear. The acceptance of falsehood is always a forced compromise. Even in the very depths of ignorance, the soul gives some kind of challenge to falsehood. However feeble and inarticulate it might seem to be in its initial stages, it is the beginning of that search for the truth which ultimately annihilates all falsehood and all ignorance. In the acceptance of a falsehood, there is a ever going restlessness, a deep suspicion, and a vague fear. For example, when an individual considers himself and others to be identical with the gross body, he cannot completely reconcile himself to this belief. In embracing this false belief, there is fear of death and fear of losing others. If a person depends for his happiness only upon the possession of forms, he knows in his heart that he is building his castles on shifting sands, that this surely is not the way to abiding happiness, that the support he so desperately clings to may give way any day. Hence, he is deeply suspicious of his grounds. Falsehood betrays itself. The individual is restlessly aware of his own insecurity. He knows that something is wrong somewhere and that he is counting upon false hopes. Falsehood is treacherously unreliable. He simply cannot afford to embrace it forever. He might as well garland himself with a poisonous snake or go to sleep on the top of a volcano that is only temporarily inactive. Falsehood bears the hallmark of being incomplete and unsatisfactory, temporary and provisional. It points to something else. It appears to the person to be hiding something greater and truer than what it seems to be. Falsehood betrays itself, and in doing so, leads one on to know the truth. Falsehood are of two types, those that arise due to irregular and loose thinking, and those that arise due to vitiated thinking. Falsehoods that arise due to irregular thinking are less harmful than those that arise from vitiated thinking. The untruths of a purely intellectual nature arise because of some mistake in the application of the intellect. Whereas falsehoods that are important from the spiritual point of view arise because of the vitiation of the intellect through the operation of blinding and unreasoning desires. The, different, the difference between these two types of falsehood may be brought out by a physiological analogy. Some disorders of the vital organs of the body are functional and some are structural. Functional diseases arise because of some irregularity in the functioning of a vital organ. In these cases, there is nothing seriously wrong with the structure of the vital organ. It has merely become sluggish or irregular and needs only slight stimulation or correction in order to function properly. In structural disorders, the disease comes into existence because of the development of some deformity in the structure or constitution of the vital organ. In these cases, the disorder of the vital organ is of a much graver nature. It has become damaged or rendered inefficient due to some tangible factor that has affected the very constitution of the organ. Both types of diseases can be corrected, but it's far easier to correct merely functional disorders than to correct structural ones. Importance of purifying intellect. This is where we ended, so we'll finish this paragraph. Falsehoods that arise due to some irregularity in the application of the intellect are like functional disorders, and falsehoods that arise due to the vitiation of the intellect are like structural ones. Just as the functional disorders are easier to correct than the structural, falsehoods arising out of the irregularity in the application of the intellect are easier to correct than those that arise due to the vitiation of intellect. In order to correct a functional disease of a vital organ, all that is necessary is to give it a better tone and strength. If there is a structural disease, it is often necessary to perform an operation. In the same way, if falsehoods arise due to some mistakes in the application of the intellect, all that is necessary is more carefulness in the application of the intellect. But if falsehoods arise due to vitiation of the intellect, it is necessary to purify the intellect. This requires the painful process of removing those desires and attachments that are responsible for vitiating the intellect. That's where we stopped. So, any thoughts before we continue? Okay.
It's giving us the path of how to, you know, move away from the effect of Maya. That's what it's giving us a very clear cut differentiation between falsehood and truth.
Yeah. And specifically, it talks about the types of thinking, the types of falsehoods that exist, and what we can be subject to. Okay, so let's continue. Citadels of Maya. The falsehoods of vitiated thinking spring from initial mistakes in valuation. They arise as a byproduct of intellectual activity, which consists in the pursuit of certain accepted values. The falsehoods of I'm reading again. The falsehoods of vitiated thinking spring from initial mistakes in valuation. They arise as a byproduct of intellectual activity, which consists in the pursuit of certain accepted values. They come into existence as a part of the rationalization and the justification of accepted values, and they owe their hold upon the human mind to their apparent support of those accepted values. If they did not affect human values or their realization, they would immediately dwindle into insignificance and lose their grip upon the mind. When false beliefs derive their being and vitality from deep rooted desires, they are nourished by false thinking. If the error in false beliefs is purely intellectual, false seeking, sorry, thank you. I'll read that again. When false beliefs derive their being and vitality from deep rooted desires, they are nourished by false seeking. If the error in false beliefs is purely intellectual, it is easy to set right. But false beliefs that are nourished by false seeking are the citadels of Maya. They involve much more than intellectual error and are not diminished by mere counter assertions of a purely intellectual nature. So, this is where the two distinctions of uh, the falsehoods come into play, right? The two types of falsehoods, one by vitiated thinking, which is due to desires, and the other just by what Baba calls irregular thinking, right? So, irregular thinking is easier to fix. It's like a functional temporary problem in the body, whereas vitiated thinking caused by desires is, I mean, it needs surgery, to use the analogy, right? Okay, let's continue. Clarity of perception from inner purity. Elimination of desires and attachments that vitiate thinking is not accomplished purely by sheer intellect. This requires right effort and right action, not by armchair speculation, but by the doing of right things shall spiritual truths be discovered. Honest action is a preliminary to the elimination of spiritual falsehoods. The perception of spiritual truths requires not merely strenuous and furious thinking, but clear thinking. And true clarity of thought is the fruit of a pure and tranquil mind. So, again, one of the big words that actually Kama is on the call. Kama pointed out very early about discourses is the word value, right? Values and valuation, which gives, I mean, which has a completely separate meaning, and more than separate meaning, it has a lot of importance in Baba's cosmology, or even the whole of discourses, right? And we see that coming even in the clarity of perception from inner purity. So it's how just not clear thinking, but I mean, just not strenuous and furious thinking, but clear thinking is the way to get to understanding and going beyond Maya. God as only truth. Not until the shedding of the last vestige of Maya created falsehood is God known as the truth. Only when Maya is completely overcome does there arise the supreme knowledge that God is the only truth. God alone is real. All that is not God, all that is impermanent and finite, all that seems to exist within the domain of duality is false. God is one infinite reality. All divisions that are conceived within this reality are falsely conceived. They do not actually exist, right? Any reactions?
You know, uh, you would think that, I mean, it's just knowing God is the only truth is not enough for us. Uh, we should also emphasize that whatever is not God does not exist. So God only exists. All else is illusion, does not exist. Um, because it exists. It exists, Baba says here, within the domain of duality. But it's false. So false, why do we want to hold on to things that are false? And to just know God is one infinite reality, we have to be very, we have to have a very clear mind and hearts. I mean, you and me can sit here and says, "Oh, God is the only reality." But do I really live this? I don't think so, because if I was much, much, much more closer to Baba. So we're still in a grip of Maya. We still are, because of our desires.
That's
I'm
true,
just
but what do you mean by the point that not, I mean, realizing the true nature of what is not God is also important. I mean, good thought. I'm just exploring that thought a little more. Why is that important? I thought that in the approach of Neti, or progressive iterative denial of truth to other things, you reach God. So in that sense, you are natifying everything, and then finally reach the point where you can't natify God, right? So how's the negation or realization of everything else as not being God important?
Uh, there was one time, I don't remember when I read this quote. Baba said it, or I don't remember, or one of the perfect masters said it. Anyway, I don't remember that, so I can't mention the source. But somebody said, "What is God?" And the answer was, "What is not God?"
Yeah,
Okay, so everything is God, but just
absolutely.
saying, but we need to be at the level that we experience that everything is God. Um, I mean, constant experience that everything is God, and in order to get there, yes, of course, we have to go through all this process of evolution and involution of consciousness. And everybody's path is different. We must not forget that. Everybody's path is different. Baba says, what did he say in one of the things? He said, if you're in touch with saint or sadhus or things like that, they may be able to give you experiences. You might be able to raise the dead. You might be all that, right? But when
Yeah,
you are in touch with perfect master, which I think at that point Baba mentioned himself too, because up to a certain point he would call himself perfect master. Then he declared that I'm the avatar. But he said, perfect master will take you through all these stages of the path, blindfolded, no experience, nothing, none of that stuff. You don't even know where you are. So Baba's ways is different. Uh, he may send us to experience every little illusory things, or he may not. Who knows? I
e-
certainly don't want to experience all the illusory
exactly.
things.
Exactly. I was a big travel freak. I used to love to go to new places. Now I've completely lost interest in that because I think, I mean, what's in a place? Right? It's
Yeah, that's good. That's really good, Kartik. I
yeah.
mean, it's these are
And and I used to be
go
crazy
ahead.
about it, right? I used to be, I mean, all my young life, I used to fantasize about traveling abroad and all of that, and looking up new places, researching new places, and so on and so forth. And I was pretty good at it. And post Baba, I think that it's a false accomplishment, or it's a very minor sense of accomplishment which is actually inconsequential, right? Almost irrelevant from the human journey, from the perspective of the soul. So now I'm very comfortable not giving any importance at all to travel.
Yeah. So the importance of that is also you shouldn't be really very conscious of the fact that you have lost your interest, because your Maya may get involved and try to show other things that are attractive to you. Now that the traveling is not that attractive, what about this now? And what about that? Maya appears in every way to take us away from the path. And that's an opponent. Baba says opponent, opposition is important. Till we get to our heroic stage where we say, no, no, I don't even want you, and I don't want you, and I don't want you, all this different aspect of Maya. Um, but when we are getting less interested to the allurement and usual pattern of being amused, or travel, or doing this, or doing to this party, that part, all that stuff. uh, I find it to be very good, because it gives us room to focus on only one thing, only one thing. In other words, we don't deviate here and there. You know what I mean? And I
Agreed. Yeah.
think that that has something to do with losing the desire. For example, you might have lost your desire for traveling, which is great. I mean, there's nothing there.
Exactly. There's
Anyway,
nothing there to see and go and see and travel to once you get it.
yeah,
Mm.
little by little.
Yeah.
Uh, Karthik, if I may add, we had read this portion of importance of purifying intellect,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
what comes to my mind is the analogy of a camera, where we had this camera where we had to focus. So basically, you focus on reality and eliminate everything else. I know
Yeah.
it's not mentioned in the text, but this is what thought came to my mind, that you have to focus on the path of reality and eliminate all other elements of duality which come from Maya. Uh,
Focus is I mean, focus and camera focus is a very good analogy, right? So, what you just said is very interesting. So, if you look at focus through a lens, focus establishes context. Focus establishes sharpness after you have set the context correctly. And in a way, it's what we have been reading in this part completely, which is about recognition of true values. Once you recognize the true values, so the lens remains the same. So if you look at the camera, the eyes and the lens are the same. But when you first pull up the camera and look at an object without focus, it's blurred. Then you change the focus and adjust the lens to pick the right object, and the sharpness magically improves, right? And that
yes.
to me is analogically the use of true values, the use of intellect for the right purpose, and moving away from vitiated thinking, which are desire led, which helps you understand and see the object clearly. Beautiful example.
Thank you for helping me and elaborating on it. I was wondering, it's not mentioned in the discourses, but that's thought which came to my mind, and I'm sharing with the group. Thank you, Karthik.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think
I
that
think
helps. I mean,
you read physics quite a bit, Ashok.
Yes, I was a science student, science and maths till 11th, and thereafter, destiny brought me into numbers and accounts.
Oh, how
So
nice. You live in India or US?
I live in India, but that's what is my profession. I'm a chartered accountant.
Oh,
Something
okay. How wonderful.
similar to a
Yeah.
CPA in America.
Yeah. You can do a lot of good things. Yeah. So there is somebody else who lives in USA. I think that's Ashish, if I'm
yes,
not
Ashish,
mistaken.
Ashish and Ravi, who join frequently on the meetings, are both from the US. Ashish is in Chicago, and Ravi, sorry, Ashish is
No,
in,
Ravi is Chicago. Yeah.
yeah, Ravi, Chicago. Ashish is Texas.
Yeah, Ravi came to Meher Center program, which was magnificent, really. It was 250 people showed up, Zoom session.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was held by someone who actually was there before Baba dropped his body, and the whole internment. He was able to tell us all about it, show pictures, videos. It was amazing, and Ravi was there. Yeah,
Was it
attended.
on Baba Zoom, and is it recorded?
No, it wasn't on Baba Zoom.
Oh,
Meher
okay.
Spiritual Center has its own Zoom.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, but I have heard that The video will be available soon. That's what I heard from someone.
And who was the speaker,
Probably.
if I may ask?
Yeah, sure. The speaker is Rick Chapman. Yeah,
Oh,
he
okay.
lives in Northern California. You know Rick Chapman
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
Robert
yeah.
Redford,
Yes,
Alan
yes. So,
Cohen. They all went there
yes.
together. Three friends. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So, Rick Chapman was one of the earliest. So, I had my brother who was into spirituality, and he also had a great love for books. And the first time I brought up Meher Baba, my brother was into Vedanta in a very big way. So, the first time I brought up Meher Baba to him, he immediately went to his bookshelf and brought out a Rick Chapman book, which was a book that Rick wrote before coming completely into Baba, right? So he's written about multiple masters. One of the chapters dedicated to Meher Baba. So I obviously read it immediately, and since then I've not read too much of Rick Chapman, but I have heard a lot of his videos. It'll be great to listen to what he has to say about Amar Tithi, and I hope if you get that audio, please share when you do. And
Yeah.
uh,
Mm,
so is
go
the
ahead.
spiritual center Northern California? Which center is
No,
this?
this is Meher Center
Myrtle
in
Beach.
Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Meher Center that by Bobo's order was built, when
Yeah,
he
yeah.
wanted
So
the.
they did
You've been
multiple
there,
programs.
right? Kartik, have
Yes,
you
yes,
been there?
multiple times. Multiple times.
Oh, okay. So you
So
know
they've
what it's
done,
like.
yeah, so
What's
they've done
that?
multiple programs. There was Charles Hines talking on Amar Tithi, which I listened to. There was one more talk on Amar Tithi, that I listened to on the recording. Again, they put it up on Baba Zoom. So I will also look up the spiritual center. Spiritual center usually takes a week plus to post their videos. So we'll
Yeah,
give it
that's
some time.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it takes time for them, but Bobo Zoom does it fast. Yeah,
Yeah. Baba
yeah,
Zoom literally overnight. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So let's continue. The next para heading is God is indivisible. When God is considered as divisible, it is due to Maya. The variegated world of multiplicity does not affect the partitioning of God into several different portions. There are different ego minds, different bodies, different forms, but only one soul. When the one soul, God, takes different ego minds and bodies, there are different individualized souls. However, this does not introduce any multiplicity within the one capital S soul itself. The capital S soul is and always remains indivisible. The one indivisible capital S soul is the base of the different ego minds and bodies, which do the thinking and acting of various types and which go through innumerable types of dual experiences. But the one indivisible soul is and always remains beyond all thinking and doing and beyond all dual experience. Okay? No opinions or ways of thinking within capital S soul. Different opinions or different ways of thinking do not introduce multiplicity within the one indivisible soul, for the simple reason that there are no opinions or any ways of thinking within the soul. All the activity of thinking and conclusions drawn therefrom are within the ego mind, which is finite. The individualized soul, as capital S soul, does not think. It is only the ego mind that thinks. This is straight out of infinite intelligence. Thinking and the knowledge that comes through thinking are both possible in the state of imperfect and incomplete knowledge that belongs to the finite ego minds. In the individual soul itself, there is neither thinking nor the knowledge that comes through thinking. Beautiful. Soul
Can I
is,
request you to read the last line again, please, or last?
yeah, actually, I'll read the last two lines.
Yes, that'll
Thinking
be great.
and yeah, thinking and the knowledge that comes through thinking are both possible in the state of imperfect and incomplete knowledge that belongs to finite ego minds. That is basically thinking is a projection of just the finite ego mind. Last line, in the individual soul itself, there is neither thinking nor the knowledge that comes through thinking, right? Further,
Yeah.
the next subheading is soul is infinite thought and intelligence. The individualized soul as capital S soul is infinite thought and infinite intelligence. There is no division between the thinker and the thinking and the conclusions of thinking, nor the duality of the subject and object. I'll read that again. There is no division between the thinker and the thinking and the conclusions of thinking, nor the duality of the subject and object. Only the ego mind with the background of the soul can become the thinker. The individual soul, which is infinite thought and infinite intelligence, does not think or have any activity of the intellect. Intellect, with its limited thinking, comes into existence only with the finite ego mind. In the completeness and the sufficiency of the infinite intelligence, which is the one capital S soul, there is no need for the intellect or its activities. So Baba clearly puts intellect in its place. There is a role, but a very, very, very limited role as far as intellect is concerned. God, the only reality. With the shedding of the last vestige of falsehoods created by Maya, the individualized soul not only knows its reality to be different from the gross, the subtle, or the mental body, but it knows itself to be God, who is the only reality. In this state, the soul knows that the mind, the subtle body, and the physical body were all equally the creations of its own imagination, and that in reality they never existed. It knows that through ignorance it conceived itself as the mind, or the subtle body, or the physical body. The individual soul knows also that, in a sense, it became the mind, the subtle body, and the gross body, and then identified itself with all these self created illusions.
Can you
So,
read this again? I'm sorry. This is the story of our life.
this is
If you don't
absolutely the
mind.
story of our life. Yeah, yeah, this is absolutely the story
Yeah.
of our life. And if you look at the last, um, I think the last three paragraphs, they are straight summaries from infinite intelligence.
Infinite intelligence. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So let me read the last paragraph again. God, the only reality. With the shedding of the last vestige of falsehoods created by Maya, the individualized soul not only knows its reality to be different from the gross, the subtle, or the mental body, but it knows itself to be God, who is the only reality, big R reality. In this state, the soul knows that the mind, the body, and the physical body were all equally the creations of its own imagination, and that in reality that they never existed. It knows that through ignorance it conceived itself as the mind, or the subtle body, or the physical body. The individual soul knows also that, in a sense, it became the mind, the subtle body, and the gross body, and then identified itself with all these self created illusions. Beautiful.
This is something that um like we basically are paying a price for our ignorance. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, it's like we don't know any better. I mean, if we knew that God is only reality in the beginning and don't let Maya to deviate us from that, then we would have been much better place. But looks like we really are cursed to to go through all this falsehood to finally shed the last layer, Baba says, and recognize that this was all illusion.
Well, we have only ourselves to blame, and he's there to help us get out of it. But we are not focusing, and we are using our faculties, the mental faculties of thinking and imagination, on the wrong focus. We have the camera, and we are looking at the wrong things.
Exactly. And Karthik, if I may just interview, you want to say something else? Because again, I'm drawn to the mutually exclusive nature of illusion and reality. And the chart 7 on God Speaks. That's what comes to my mind. That, illusion and reality within the domain of everything are two mutually exclusive, you know, uh, phenomenon. And of course reality is the ultimate goal. And so if you come to this page 155 of, or chart 7 of God Speaks.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just getting that 1 second.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's very relevant. And it's this is chart 1 second.
Yeah, this one.
Yes, this one. So, this illusion and reality, they've brought it out very, very clearly that
Yeah,
they are mutually exclusive, and they are in the domain of God is everything and all else is nothing. I think it's beautifully put uh, for us to imprint in our minds, or whenever we
beautiful.
have thoughts, words, and deeds.
Very good. No, I'm glad you thought of this, which is the right way to reaffirm the understanding, and more importantly, also understand this chart in the right context. Thank you for that.
Anybody else want to add? Kama, want to say something?
Yeah, Kama. So with that, let's go to the last part, which is the first part of Maya. Right. So yeah. So before we start, we'll just read the subheadings. Importance of understanding Maya, essence of falsehood, two kinds of knowledge, mistakes in valuation, examples of relative values, false values, derivative and relative, emptiness of sense objects, taking as important the unimportant, taking as unimportant the important. Finally, the last para is wrong importance. So all we know about Maya is from the various discourses and statements Baba has made about Maya. Is Maya is the principle of ignorance that makes you attribute wrongly more importance than deserved to the wrong things, and less importance than deserved to the true things, to God, to reality, big R reality, right? And that entire wrong valuation and valuation linked understanding and behavior is led by the principle of ignorance, led by or operated through the principle of ignorance, right? So let's get into the last chapter on Maya. So anybody wants to read?
Yeah, Karthik, if I may.
Sure, sure, please.
Yeah. So we are on Maya. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Maya,
Japa.
Jai Baba. Part 1, false values. Everyone wants to know and realize the truth. But truth cannot be known and realized as truth unless ignorance is known and realized as ignorance. The subheading is importance of understanding Maya. Hence arises the importance of understanding Maya or the principle of ignorance. People read and hear much about Maya, but few understand what it really is. It is not enough to have a superficial understanding of Maya. It is necessary that Maya should be understood as it is in its reality. To understand Maya or the principle of ignorance is to know half of the truth of the universe. Ignorance in all its forms must disappear if the soul is to be established in the state of knowledge. Allow me to read the last two lines again, if you may, please.
Sure, sure.
I think it's very profound and it's given in no uncertain terms. Uh, to understand Maya or the principle of ignorance is to know half of the truth of the universe. Ignorance in all its forms must disappear if the soul is to be established in the state of knowledge. Next subheading is essence of falsehood.
So, if I may stop you, why do you think he's saying half of the truth of universe? What's the other half?
The other half is reality. I mean, ignorance and knowledge.
Where is it, Karthik? I missed that.
So,
Where is that
to
half?
understand Maya, the last but one line, to understand Maya or the principle of ignorance is to know half of the big T truth of the universe.
Uh, Karthik, if I may say, Maya is the shadow of knowledge, right? Or Maya.
Okay.
So basically, knowledge plus ignorance is equal to the truth, full truth. Is that a right way of interpreting what you just what has been said here? Because if Maya is half of the truth of the universe, the other half has to be knowledge. So, to my mind, the complete is K plus I. I mean, putting it very mathematically, where K is the knowledge and I is the ignorance. Is that a right way? If I am wrong, please. I'm happy to listen to.
No, knowledge plus ignorance and mathematical completeness, I totally agree. But I my interpretation of 50% weightage to Maya is what is the body of knowledge that we are trying to uncover in this involution journey? In this involution journey, we are trying to understand about ourselves, the true nature of the soul, and to appreciate God as understand and appreciate God as He deserves to be known and appreciated. That process, the biggest stumbling block, the biggest mountain to climb is Maya. So, half of the truth of the universe is Maya. So, if you have figured Maya, you're halfway there. That's the point that's being made as per my understanding.
Brilliant. Yeah, I missed that. Yes, brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but initially you said, what's the other half? Right? That was
Yeah.
your question, Karthik.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other half is understanding the principles of working, the understanding the journey of the soul, understanding the planes, understanding the consciousness, and actually making your way to the whole process of involution successfully, and hence reaching God. But the bulk of the journey is, as emphasized by Baba here, is on cracking Maya. Is my take. Yeah.
To cracking Maya, to answer your question, I'm sure if we go further, Baba will explain better or more. But the other half, I think, is truth. Because once you, but if you go a little bit up there, it's not only to understand. Baba used the word realize. We are to
Yes.
realize also the Maya. Means go through all of it and become aware that this is nothing. This is a nothing in nothingness. Once you recognize that, then you are to eligible to know the truth without going through that journey of first getting entangled with Maya and then eventually getting rid of it. You're not ready. I mean, not you, I mean me, all of us, I mean, individualized soul, I mean, we're not ready.
Yeah.
So it's like a prerequisite. You want to take one course, the professor says, no, you got to take this course and that course to be ready to, because it's an advanced one. No, like that, I think, I don't know. It seems that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's a prerequisite or the primary course, and the other half is the rest of the knowledge.
Which is focusing on truth. Is the
Correct.
rest of the knowledge, but the true knowledge. Yeah, I think in that seven reality, Baba talks about
Yes,
it.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Over to you, Ashok.
Essence of falsehood. Therefore, it is imperatively necessary for humanity to know what is false, to know it to be false, and to get rid of the false by knowing it to be false. What is the essential nature of falsehood? If the true is known as being true, or if the false is known as being false, there is no falsehood but only a form of knowledge. Falsehood consists in taking the true as being false or the false as being true. That is, in considering something to be other than what it really is. The subtopic is essence of falsehood. Falsehood is an error in judging the
I'm sorry,
nature of.
I'm sorry, I was talking and I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry about that. Um,
Okay.
if you can please roll it up, Kartik. Hold on. Yeah. Says let's make sense out of this. Baba says, therefore, it is imperatively necessary for humanity to know what is false. Number one. Number one, to know what is false. Two, to know it to be false. Three, to get rid of the false by knowing it to be false. You get that? I mean, uh, it's important here to why all these words are being said. It seems to be, each of these are different steps. Do you get the same thing, you guys?
Yeah, yeah.
Mao,
So
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Ashok.
Yeah, it says that you have to make an intense effort to first know or to know what it is false and then make an effort to get rid of the false by knowing that it is false. So, it calls for a individualized action on our own parts to take real effort, sort of, to fight gravity of falsehood or whatever, in a sense of an aircraft in this spaceship taking moving away from the earth. So you got to take real intense effort uh, to get rid of the false and then come to the truth and reality is what I think you have a point there, Mao. That's what I interpret. Sorry, Karthik, you may proceed. Yeah.
No, no, yeah, it's correct. It's a correct highlighting of what is being said. First is to know what is false, then know it to be false, and then get rid of the false by knowing it to be false.
I guess that is stage of getting rid of the false by knowing it to be false is that realization that Baba talks about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Okay.
the next
Yeah.
subtopic is two kinds of knowledge. Broadly speaking, there are two kinds of knowledge: purely intellectual judgments about the facts of existence, and judgments of valuation, which imply the appreciation of the worth or importance of things. Purely intellectual judgments or beliefs derive their importance from being related to values in some way. Divorced from values, they have very meager importance in themselves. For example, no one takes much interest in counting exactly the number of leaves on a particular tree, although, from the purely theoretical point of view, such information would be a form of knowledge. Such information or knowledge is treated as unimportant because it is not vitally connected with other values. Intellectual knowledge becomes important when it enables man to realize certain values by giving him control over the means to their realization, or when it enters into valuation itself as an important factor, modifying or in some other way affecting the accepted values.
Well, I have to be honest with you. I didn't. I got lost here. I think the writing is not that good. I don't know why I got lost in reading this. As from the for example, from the
Yeah, maybe you
for
read that
example.
part again, Ashok. For
Yes.
example, no one takes from
Okay.
the tree. Yeah.
For example, no one takes much interest in counting exactly the number of trees on a particular tree, although from the purely theoretical point of view, such information would be a form of knowledge.
Mhm.
Such information or knowledge is treated as unimportant because it is not vitally connected with other values. Intellectual knowledge becomes important when it enables man to realize certain values by giving him control over the means to the realization, or when it enters into valuation as an important factor, modifying or in some other way affecting the accepted values. If I may add, Karthik, we can take the analogy of data versus information. So the number of leaves on a tree might be just data. There are so many leaves on one particular tree. But when you have some, information or knowledge which is important and which can help us, so that becomes information. So similarly, intellectual knowledge becomes important when it enables man to realize certain values by giving him control over the means to their realization, or when it enters into valuation itself as an important factor, modifying or in some other way affecting the accepted values. So this is what I can think of.
That's a good
uh,
point. Yeah, data versus information. Something that is consequential, but yet it is a form of knowledge. The number of leaves on a tree is a fact. You can't deny it. But what is the consequence? What is the use of that? Is only when it becomes the stage of information. Yeah, but data versus information is a good way of analyzing that or understanding that.
Mahu, does it make it clearer for you?
Yes and no, but thank you for asking. Is you know what I get is whatever knowledge that does not help us to recognize what is important for our progress or and so forth are um, are not useful. You know, knowledge for the sake of knowledge. People think, oh, you know everything. You know about this. You know about that. You know about this. So what? If somebody is know about a lot of things and write books about a lot of things, what difference does that make in his life, his way of thinking or living a life, you know? um so it has something to do with valuation. If it helps us to uh, recognize, I think it's that's the sense of discernment, uh, that when it'll help us that when we are entering the valuation, then it is a good factor, Baba says. Otherwise, is unimportant, it looks like. Only if we can use it as for our valuation. And here it says by giving him control over the means to their realization. So somehow it helps us to control the means or
The
triumph
means
over it.
or yeah, means or the understanding of other things or the broader creative universe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know, it goes back to the same thing Baba was saying is how focused we are, knowing that God is the only reality. It goes back to that.
Yes.
Hold on, there is more content on valuation coming in.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yes. So the next subtopic is mistakes in valuation. Just as there are two kinds of judgment, there are two kinds of falsehood. Mistakes in accepting as facts those things that are not facts, and mistakes in valuation. Mistakes in valuation can be committed in the following ways: in taking as important that which is unimportant, in taking as unimportant that which is important, or in giving to a thing an importance other than the importance it really has. All these falsehoods are creations of Maya. Although Maya includes all falsehoods from the spiritual point of view, there are some falsehoods that count and some falsehoods that do not count very much. If a person takes a throne to a higher than it is, it would be falsehood, but one that does not matter very much.
What did he say? I didn't understand this throne part. Did you guys understand it?
Yeah, I think just finish that line. It's basically giving too much
Oh,
importance to the throne.
oh, throne. Uh-huh. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, throne. Yeah, can you continue,
I, I resume
Ashok?
from on the other hand, is it?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. On the other hand, if a person regards the throne as the be all and end all of his life, that would be a falsehood which substantially affects the course and significance of his life. On the whole, mistakes in valuation are far more effective in misguiding, perverting, and limiting life than mistakes in purely intellectual judgments about certain objective facts. Shall I
Because
read the
it's
next?
easy to get rid of intellectual judgment, right? I
Correct.
mean, earlier he identified mistakes that ends to that. Um, yeah, he's saying that because on the whole, mistakes in valuation are far more effective in misguiding, perverting and limiting life than mistakes in purely intellectual judgments. Yes, because I think those are probably uh, gets created or nourished by our desires. I think earlier it talked about it. And when it's coming from our desires, then it's very long lasting. We're more captured by that. Yeah.
More difficult to break through. Yes.
Yeah, more difficult is to break through because of Maya, we don't even recognize it to be to be untrue. We think
Yes.
this is it, you know.
Coming on, moving on to the next part, which is basically from the subtopic examples of relative values.
No, that's the next one. We have to start here. Mistakes in valuation.
Okay, okay, sorry. Mistakes in valuation arise owing to the influence of subjective desires or wants. True values are values that belong to things in their own right. They are intrinsic, and because they are intrinsic, they are absolute and permanent and are not liable to change from time to time or from person to person. False values are derived from desires or wants. They are dependent upon subjective factors, and being dependent upon subjective factors, they are relative and impermanent and are liable to change from time to time and from person to person. Next subtopic, examples of relative values. For example, an individual who is very thirsty and is in a desert like the Sahara thinks that nothing is more precious than water, while someone who has at hand an abundance of water and who is not very thirsty does not attach the same importance to it. In the same way, a person who is hungry considers food very important, but the individual who has had a full dinner does not even think of food until he is hungry again. The same thing applies to other lusts and longings, which project imaginary and relative values only to those objects that fulfill those lusts and longings.
Beautiful paragraph. I mean, it tells you what values, I mean, how values can be relatively understood. The same thing does not hold the same value to everyone, right? So that's what is being brought out here. And in that sense, when we give some wrong attribution or value to something, it is to start with personal, apart from being wrong, right? So, yeah, I think beautiful.
We
I
use
think another thing that could be discussed here is that, through this example, you see, when you are detached, that means your desires are fading out, not completely gone and so forth. You don't have any craving for doing an action that is lustful or this and that, right? Um, but if you are really drowned in your desires and so forth, then you feel hungry and you think food is the most important thing in life. That's a false value. You see, our
Extent.
desire drive us
Hope.
to, yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
our desires, I think, drive us to a level where this heading, it says false values, derivative and relative. To give importance to false values or desires. Yeah. Because, when you don't feel hungry at all or you're fasting, you don't think that food is very important matter in life. right? That's
Yeah,
your true evaluation. There are other important things because maybe you're fasting, you're meditating, you're talking to God, and so forth. So at that point, food is non-relevant. You don't want
till
food or
till
water.
probably you go to the third day of fasting, where it becomes kind of it's a mental game. You know, it can.
Yeah,
I know.
it's a
Yeah,
mental game.
yeah. Okay, we can
Okay.
continue.
Next subtopic: false values, derivative and relative. The value of sense objects is great or small according to the intensity or urgency with which they are desired. If these lusts and longings increase, the corresponding objects assume greater importance. If they subside in the intensity or urgency, the objects also lose much of their importance. If the lusts and longings appear intermittently, those objects retain possible value when the lust and longings are latent, and actual value when they are manifested. These are all false values because they are not inherent in the objects themselves. When in the light of true knowledge, all the lusts and longings disappear completely. Objects vested with importance through the working of these lusts and longings immediately lose all their borrowed importance and appear meaningless. Uh,
Yeah, that's true.
Allow me,
That's very
Karthik, if I
true.
can take an sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm taking the analogy of a flashlight. I think it came somewhere. So there is darkness, and once you have light, so likewise, when you have light of knowledge, your lust and longings will be removed like darkness. Mahu, please continue. Sorry for interrupting. Yeah.
No, 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 that's okay. No, I wasn't saying anything. Go ahead, please. No,
Okay.
I said just one sentence. Go ahead.
So I think that's what came to my mind, and you know,
Sure.
anybody, shall we read the next? Uh,
Yeah.
okay, the next subtopic is emptiness of sense objects. Just as a coin that is not in current use is treated as false, though it has a kind of existence, the objects of lust and longing, when seen in their emptiness, are treated as false, though these objects might continue to have some kind of recognition. They all exist and they may be known and seen, but they no longer mean the same thing. They hold false promise of fulfillment to an imagination perverted by lusts and longings, yet to tranquil and steady perception just seem to have no importance when they are considered as separate from the soul.
Karthik, that's where that your losing interest in traveling comes to
Yeah.
play.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, next subtopic: taking as important the unimportant. When a loved one dies, there is sorrow and loneliness. But this sense of loss is rooted in attachment to the form independently of the soul. It is the form that has vanished, not the soul. The soul is not dead in its true nature, it has not even gone away, for it is everywhere. Nonetheless, through attachment to the body, the form was considered important. All longings, desires, emotions, and thoughts were centered upon the form, and when through death the form disappears, there is a vacuum which expresses itself through missing the departed one.
So do you get that? So when somebody dies, in a sense, we do not really miss that person. when you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We are missing that sense of companionship and communion with that person. See, all of a sudden that disappears, so there's a void.
The
So it goes back to us and our falsehood thinking.
correct.
But
It is the
if we
experience.
really, go ahead.
It's the experiences that we have had with someone that is being missed. That's being you long for that, right?
Yeah,
So that's basically food for the mind. The mind loves companionship, loves experiences that it has with somebody else, and that is lost, and that's what is being missed.
but
And
at
I
the
think they,
same time, go ahead, Kashur.
I think they are trying to say that we are giving more importance to the physical form of the body, and the soul is eternal. That's what I can get from that
Correct.
paragraph.
Yeah, that too,
Yeah, I
sure.
think that's extended further in the next para. Just go ahead.
Okay. If the form as such had not come to be surcharged with false importance, there would be no sorrow in missing the one who has passed away. The feeling of loneliness, the lingering memory of the beloved, the longing that he or she should still be present, the tears of bereavement, and the sights of separation, they are all due to false valuation, the working of Maya. When an unimportant thing is regarded as important, we have one principal manifestation of the working of Maya. From the spiritual point of view, it is a form of ignorance.
Can I share something, Kartik?
Sure.
This is very important, although we cannot really, if somebody lost their dear ones, we're talking about somebody lost their husband or their wife or children, especially. It's very hard to, relate this information to them because it goes through all that stage of grieving and so forth. Um, but for example, there's this thing that, I'm sure you guys know, read it. So when one of Baba's brother, Jamshed, lived a very short life. At that time, even Baba's mother, Shirin Mai, was still alive. So when he died suddenly, and I think he was on his late 20s or 30s, something like that. Baba was, very happy and started passing sweets and celebrate, and so forth. And when the mother came to Merazad and saw all that, she got furious. And says, maybe he was calling him Merok. He says, Merok, what are you doing? Your brother died, and then you're celebrating, you're passing sweets, you don't have no sorrow for the lost brother, that. And then Baba tell the mother, you have no idea who Jamshed was. And you have no idea how happy he is now by not having this body anymore. So, that's another thing to remember when somebody dies, they're really, in a way, freed, moving forward, always Mani said, moving forward, like that.
Yeah. The challenge is we should be all in the I mean hopefully all of us should have a more a progression to the positive when we drop when we die from the current forms and go to the next form, or hopefully not get the next form and go veiled, led by Baba. There should be a progression. That's the hope.
Yeah, and we can't be if somebody lost their dear ones, of course we don't want to hurt their feelings, right? We don't expect them to have this recognition and so forth. But in our own heart and consciousness, we know that that soul is departed and they're happy and so forth. But we can sympathize with the family and so forth while they're mourning and they're having a hard time, like that.
Very true. Yeah.
Taking as unimportant the important. On the other hand, the working of Maya also expresses itself by making an important thing look unimportant. In reality, the only thing that has importance is God. But very few persons are really interested in God for his own sake. H capital. If the worldly minded turn to God at all, it is mostly for their own selfish and mundane purposes. They seek the gratification of their own desires, hopes, and even revenges through the intervention of God of their imagination. They do not seek God as truth. They long for all things except the only truth, which they regard as unimportant. This again is the blinding of vision caused by the working of Maya. People pursue their happiness through everything except God, which is the only unfailing source of abiding joy. Wrong importance, the next subtopic. The working of Maya also expresses itself by making the mind giving to a thing an importance other than the importance it really has. This happens when rituals, ceremonies, and other external religious practices are considered to be ends in themselves. They have their own value as means to an end, as vehicles of life, as mediums of expressions. But as soon as they assume claims in their own right, they are being given an importance other than that which belongs to them. When they are considered important in themselves, they bind life instead of serving the purpose of expressing it. When the inessential is allowed to predominate over the essential by giving it wrong importance, one has the third principle from a principal form of ignorance concerning valuation. This again is the working of Maya. Uh, Kartik, if I may use the analogy of the camera and lens. So basically, in the earlier paragraph, that wrong importance which they're saying is probably some fog which comes in front of the lens, and it distances us from what is important, and giving wrong valuation to the unimportant, as if there is a layer or some disturbance on the lens.
Disturbance outside the lens or
Yeah, outside lens.
apart from the lens. Yes, yes. So for which is temporary, it's like dirt on a mirror. Another analogy you love, uh, and yeah, good way to understand this. So you have three principal form of ignorance. So one is important not being treated as rather the other one unimportant being treated as important, important not being treated as unimportant, and the inessential, the unimportant, allowed to predominate over the important, right? So that's those are the three forms of ignorance concerning valuation or false valuation. All of this is governed or operated through the principle of Maya, right? That's what we take away. As I've said before, this is my favorite topic. Maya is a favorite topic, and like Baba says, you crack Maya, you cracked half the battle. So I'm not saying I've cracked Maya, but I love and I learn so much every time I read this these four parts. They're fascinating. Any other
Yes,
thoughts
yeah, that's
before
true.
we stop recording, and then maybe we can spend a few minutes
Uh,
talking about Amartiti?
yeah,
Absolutely.
So,
good idea.
Karthik,
Just
you
mm.
Yeah, Ashish, and then Mahu. Yeah.
so Karthik, you said, Miss you Maya is your favorite topic, right? You said like you're trying to get rid of Maya. So how you are doing that one? You mentioned, right? So
I said only it's a favorite topic, so I'm giving a lot of value to it,
mhm.
but I have not cracked it.
No, but what
Right.
what's the action you are taking, right? You didn't crack it, but what exactly? What are the steps you are doing it to try to crack it down? That's my
So
question.
no, that's a good question. Very good question. So it's about uh, identifying the real values of all the things around you and doing right action. So it's all about just right action with armed with the right knowledge, right? So that sounds very esoteric and profound, but in it lies your day-to-day life as well, right? So when you're making the smallest of decisions, try to be making the right decisions which help you from a sanskaric standpoint rather than debilitate you or affect you negatively from a sanskaric standpoint. I think easier said than done because we have already attributed false values to things around us, and as many of us on the call are equally guilty of that, right? So we like objects, we try to indulge in desires, we try to I might have given up on travel, but there are many things which I have not obviously given up, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what I would say. Does that kind of answer
Okay.
your question?
Yeah. Means everyone has a different answers, but yeah, you're given the good one. Yeah.
If I
Okay.
may add, mathematically, uh, uh, knowledge is equal to truth minus false. Means getting
Okay.
rid of the false as the unimportant thing. False being unimportant, truth being important. So, if you want to reach, or as wayfarers, we are all on the path. We have to somehow get to the truth and eliminate the false.
Sure. Mahu, you were saying something when Ashi started.
Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say at that time, but it goes back to that true valuation about everything in our journey to God. And I realized that, it takes a long time. It's layer, we just have to shed all these layers, um, one by one attachment to this that goes away, then another one, then another one. It all depends on, and that's why Baba says everybody's journey is different, because I may have for example, craving for the food as lost in me, much stronger than the person who's sitting next to me, um, with anger, right? So it all depends on, in your, let's say, your chart. You write a chart. The astrologers that write your chart. It all depends on which one is the one that is more deeply rooted in your consciousness, takes longer to get rid of, and the one that it has some all to do with your past lives, and sense
Yeah.
accumulated sanskaras, and but the one that you have less attachment with and so forth, you easily can get rid of it, like that layers are going away sooner, like that. So our journeys are different, really. Continue talking about it, it's
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
um, not two peoples are the same.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And your associations of values will be different from everybody else. And yeah, but the fun is in recognizing as quickly as possible and trying to bring more of Baba into our lives and into our decisions and choices.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe I'll stop recording here, and give you all some time to discuss about